In a time when players have long abandoned the husk of what used to be BioWare, and at the same time that Bethesda is driving that final nail in its own coffin with Fallout First, Obsidian drops the most blatant ripoff of both of those previously mentioned studios' flagship titles, and no one is mad because they did it better. Now, The Outer Worlds is flawed, but it's more than playable, and the world building and storytelling show promise for what could be a pretty fantastic trilogy. Without spoiling much, at about 16 hours into the game, I decided to start racing towards the finish to see if the decisions and accomplishments that I have made thus far would have any kind of impact. Very specifically, I did it so I could talk about it in this review. What I found was in the final chapter, there are several instances where you could see the result of your previous actions coming back to haunt or help you. The ending itself has a bit of finality to it as well, as it does its best to give you a where are they now style update on many of the characters you encountered. Sure, it's in slideshow form, and it feels like you took a bunch of wrong turns in a choose your own adventure book, but at least there's no question that every story you participate in the Outer Worlds has an end. Now, how they're going to tie in sequels to this storyline while retaining some of the same squad members is beyond me, because, just as an example, one of my squad mates is a fucking lush, and I was given plenty of opportunities to help, but I didn't, and in the end, she was still a drunk. Another character develops a romance angle for another NPC, because your character has zero game and gets shut down left and right, so just don't even try, there's no romance here.
I am relieved to hear it, Captain. No, but I am programmed to put you at ease by saying so.
But early on in the game, there are options to release that squad member from her duties to go and pursue that love. Is she just out of the sequel then? Or maybe the sequel will focus on a completely different main protagonist. But if the sequels focus on a different hero and a completely different storyline, that's totally fine, because you basically never get to see your own character because all interactions and gameplay are in the first person and they don't talk, so what was the point of? Character creation starts out in the same way that you would build any RPG character. First, you assign a couple of basic stats, strength, dexterity, intelligence, all that good stuff, and then you have a whole list of skills. Now, these skills are pretty important in the game, but given the game's easiness, I guess, with the lower difficulty levels, basically anything outside of Supernova is pretty easy. You probably want to put everything into dialogue and anything in tech and start building on that. Now, more on that later. You also have Aptitude, which basically is kind of like what your specialties are. I chose the cashier one because of persuasion. And then you get into the actual face builder, which has a ton of slides. There's no body adjustments you could do, but the amount of face shit is insane. There's so many things here. And you just go through and just slide these all over the place. And then the next thing you know, we have Renegade Mario. But it can be a bit of a nightmare generator if you decide to use that randomize function. Then actually is a great way to see all the different things that you could possibly do to your character. But we're going to go ahead and settle on this one. Yeah, this looks good. I wonder if this has an impact on my romance options. Maybe that's the problem. The game doesn't waste any time getting you familiar with its humor, as the very first thing that happens is your pod lands on the now deceased captain of the Unreliable, leaving you to assume his duties. Basically, the game would not exist if this guy just stood a few feet over to the left.
What in law's name? Is that him? Oh, that idiot.
So your first objective is to get your ship off the ground, which has a few prerequisites. First, you need a gun, and thankfully, this guy has one.
You've tried the best now. Now try the rest. Spacer's choice. Here, hope this gun serves you better than it did me.
Next, you need to secure a viable power regulator for the ship, and this ultimately leads you to where you need to make your first major decision in the game, because there are two of these power regulators. One in the corporatist town of Edgewater, where everyone is required to drink the Kool-Aid and spout the company slogan whenever possible, and the other is providing power to the filthy unregulated band of socialist deserters out at the Botanical Lab. One way or another, you're going to disappoint someone, so why not both?
Well, I did not expect you back so soon, Captain.
Once the power regulator is secure, you can move on with your plans to continue doing whatever you want. But, if I may, at this point you should have already picked up your first companion. Unless... But don't do that, because then you miss out on these fantastic specials.
Piss. And I had hoped it might not come to this.
While companions are not at all needed to complete the game, they add a ton of content with their personalized missions and story arcs, and, of course, how they aid you in combat. 9 times out of 10, though, they're gonna get their asses kicked because they have the same stupid AI that everyone else has. But at the very least, you can try to hook them up with better armor, and perhaps tweak their behaviors in the companion screen here. You can also assign them perks as you level, and even adjust your own perks to better support them. And companions aren't just dummy characters that hang out while you talk to other people. A lot of times they actually partake in the conversation. Sometimes it's generic, but sometimes it's actually personalized as well, which makes you really think about how much actual VO has been recorded for this thing.
Sam, my vacuum tubes require evacuating. No, not those. The ones in port. Yes, there. Thank you. And while you're at it, could you switch my binaries to that? Exactly. I haven't felt this clean and efficient since Captain Hawthorne installed my subalternate auxiliary.
Speaking of interactions and dialogue, The Outer Worlds executes this almost flawlessly. You don't have QuickTime interrupts like you do in the later Mass Effect titles, but you can steer a conversation in so many different directions and still get a solid sequence of responses. Some of the smaller encounters come off pretty strange though, like when you're using your handy-dandy cloaking device and the power runs out, revealing your character. So how do you recharge it? Well, a guard will interrogate you, asking you, what are you doing in this area? And you just bullshit him.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Low-budget Jedi mind tricks, I guess. And this is also where some of your spent skill points come in handy. If you put them in lying or a persuasion or whatever, you're gonna see a number next to whatever that particular stat is, and you can choose it if you meet that particular threshold. But in some cases, it does feel like a simple white lie requires a lot of skill.
What do you think you're doing? Oh, my mistake.
The fuck you say to me, you little shit?
Here we go. Nice work.
And I have to say, despite there being a silent protagonist, I do appreciate the fact that everything is voiced. A lot of games will have like one opening line voiced, and then the rest of it is all written, and you have to basically read the rest of it. I don't want to do that. I don't want to read. Who reads? Just tell me the story. That's what I want. So it feels good to be able to play a game that has actual fully VO'd content from beginning to end. Now let's talk briefly about the character summary, which is pretty much where all of your RPG elements are, and since this is an RPG, we should probably talk about some of these. So the character summary is going to have all of your attributes and of course a detailed breakdown of each specific one. These are the things you picked in character creation. Over here in skills, you get 10 points to spend per level, but you have to reach level 50 before you unlock the ability to be able to spend points on each subcategory. So you have range, dialogue, defense, stealth, tech, and some of these have numbers by them that are in parentheses. That means you're getting some kind of bonus from either gear or from your teammates. You can see that they are also tiered. You could go to 20 points, unlock this, 40 points, that, 60 points, etc., 80 and 100. Now, the individual tier unlocks don't necessarily feel like they're that exciting, but when you add up all the ones you've unlocked all the way through to 100, suddenly it feels a little bit more like a specialization. But there's no single unlock that's going to make you feel like the entire gameplay has changed. It's all very incremental. Perks are great. I actually really like the perk system because you can actually go and spend bits if you want to refund them all and try something completely different, which is great because some of these are very dependent on whether or not you have a companion at your side, and if some point in time you decide you want to go just lone wolf and just go out by yourself, you can respec to make that work for you. Now, a lot of these are very quality of life driven. You could run 20% faster or walk 20% faster. You could carry more items. Certain types of items don't cost so much. Whenever a companion gets a kill, you get bonus XP. You have X amount more life. Your time dilation meter fills up more quickly. So most of them are just ways to just further enhance abilities you already have. You're not unlocking anything new here. Your character summary is basically your character sheet. It's a combination of everything that you've spec'd into or everything you're wearing. It just kind of gives you where your current stats are, how fast you can run, crouch speed, etc. It also shows your flaws. Now, flaws occur pretty much at random, but they are triggered whenever something happens to you. If you fall off something so many times, you can actually choose to take a permanent stat reduction, usually it's a pretty small reduction, in exchange for a perk point. I have taken all of these, by the way. Reputation grinding exists, something that a lot of people here in this community are pretty much used to. You could grind it up or down, and there are perks, and of course there are downsides to doing either one of those. And it's probably going to be one of the main reasons why a lot of people are going to play this game over and over again. They're going to see what happens if you take, let's say, the Groundbreaker, for example, the first ship that you land on, you kill everybody there, your reputation goes to shit. Like, apparently it unlocks things elsewhere in the galaxy. I personally want to go through and see what happens when I do that myself, and I'm currently working my way through that right now. Your inventory screen is pretty straightforward. You have 4 slots you can put weapons in and hot swap between them during combat. And you also have science weapons here, which I'm not going to talk about at all during this review because I don't have any experience with them. The ones I have is kind of lackluster, but I have a friend who says that it's amazing. Basically, science weapons scale with your stats, so I guess if you max out a specific stat for this, it's going to go from a booger shooter to a BFG 9000. You also have your armor slots, just for the body and for the helm. Very, very simple. And then you have your inhaler, which you could put consumables in. So let's say, for example, you take like this frozen dinner. You can put that in your inhaler and it gives you a stat bonus. In this case, it gives you, I believe, a 25% there to 25% for 2 minutes base health increase. And you just inhale that entire TV dinner like I did when I was 240 pounds. But TV dinner Salisbury steak is like across the board pretty amazing, right? These are your mods. You can put them on at any mod tinkering station. Tinkering, by the way, is how you spend bits to level up your weapons. It's very nice to be able to keep weapons, but it's going to incrementally cost more bits as you spend them. General items, quest items, and junk. Junk functions just like it does in Fallout. You just basically take everything that you don't want, all this crap, you can put it in the junk folder, then you go to a vendor, and then you could sell it. Should note that companions also have their own individual weapon slots, armor slots, and perks that you could tailor, as well as the behaviors. And that's it! Mission types are about what you would expect with a game like this. Some of them are more dialogue oriented, go somewhere and convince someone to do a thing, or the other ones are go and talk to or interface with a terminal or retrieve an item. Most of them are go to a point and do a thing, which is pretty much what every single mission in every single game ever. But things I didn't see, which is a bit surprising, was like horde mode. Show up somewhere and get attacked by waves and waves of things. Now, I did only put 20 hours in the game. It's entirely possible that I missed this, I don't know, but it does seem a bit strange that probably the most common mission type that you'd find in a game like Destiny, for example, is just actually not here, or at least not common. But that doesn't mean you can't, shoot a couple of civilians and, start your own horde mode. That's pretty easy. But as you'd expect, the missions that you do will contribute towards the end goal. Some of them are going to be siloed where they only impact whatever's going on in that particular colony, but a lot of times the more you do on a planet or with a colony or a town or whatever, or with your companions, the more you do, the better off they'll be at the end. And just like other games, you do have a point of no return, and it is very clearly stated that after this point, you cannot go back, so make sure you've attended to all of the things that you want to before clicking OK. In all modes except for Supernova mode, which is the hardest difficulty, you can pretty much fast travel to any point that you have discovered. But in Supernova mode, you can only teleport back to your ship. You can, in all modes, move your ship from landing pad to landing pad, which are again scattered throughout the various larger towns and whatnot, but you can't just save wherever you want in Supernova mode. You have to go back to your ship and sleep, or zone in or out of an instance.
Activating contingency plan DM-17. Captain is a psychopath. Please use your travel terminal and venture to Monarch via the Cascadia landing pad. I should warn you, Captain, Cascadia is an incredibly hazardous location, rife with deadly fauna and flora. You will most likely die within 3 steps of the landing pad.
Now, one of the biggest complaints people have about the game is that the AI is just too damn stupid, and it makes the game a little too easy because you can predict where they're going to go because usually they're running straight at you or they line up just to get murdered, and it just makes it so simple and almost silly. But there have been some moments where they'll put something between you and them in order to take cover. But I also don't know if it's because maybe the pathing got messed up and maybe he's just stuck. But what's funny is because the AI chooses random pathing at times, it actually makes it difficult to predict where the enemy is going to be moving to. So a lot of times you end up shooting and they're just zigzagging all over the place at completely random. They're not moving for cover. You would expect them to move for cover or get out of the way, but they don't. They kind of move in on random directions. And so yeah, there is some difficulties to it because it's so unpredictable. But for the most part, yeah, the AI is pretty damn dumb. Another issue is that there's really not a broad variety of both enemies and weapons. Your weapons, you can apply mods. You have 2 slots for mods for some, I think 3 for other types of weapons. So you get some flexibility in the different things you can make a weapon do, but a lot of them are, you know, larger magazine or changing the actual damage type. But in the end, you're still stuck with about maybe 5 or 6 different actual ranged weapons, but there's a ton of melee. But they all kind of do the same thing. They melee, so I don't know if that really counts. And the same thing can be said about enemy variety. You pretty much only have 3 different factions or species. You have automechanical, which are robots. You have the creatures, which are obviously all your alien and wildlife. And then you have humans, which come in various hats and armor. Not a whole lot you can do with humans, so well, I'll give that to them. With creatures and wildlife, though, like there's a pretty good variety there, which is understandable. Of course, you have flying creatures, you have crawling creatures, you have slithering creatures, you have creatures that are bipeds, you have creatures that are quadrupeds, or quadrupeds? Yeah, I think so. But with automechanical, I was a little disappointed. There's not a whole lot of different variety with automechanicals. There's only like a flying one, and then there's like a Johnny 5 one, and then there's like, I think another one. I can't even think of what it is. I'll probably find it in a video and play it right here. But there's not a whole lot of variety in a species or in a type that you would expect there to be almost ultimate flexibility with. And let me tell you, if the story wasn't as good as it is, and the way that they deliver the story wasn't as well done and polished as it is, these other peripheral issues would be much more pronounced. But because everything else is pretty good, or really good, we kind of overlook these things. But that doesn't mean it shouldn't be noted. Now, I do have some critiques about the overall world design itself. They look great, very No Man's Sky-esque, but they kind of feel static, especially in the towns. Even when you find something sitting on like a railing or on a shelf and you try to shoot at it, think it's gonna fly away or maybe disappear, it doesn't do anything. So the world itself does feel a little static. But again, I don't want to take away from the fact that the game does look really good. There's plenty of areas that you're just going to be like, what the hell? I found myself in some lobbies just kind of slow panning around, looking at some of the architecture and some of the designs, and it just looks so great. It's a shame there's no photo mode and no way to hide your UI altogether yet. These are things that could probably be patched in later, but man, there are so many instances where I just wanted to sit there and just take a photo with my character in a certain room or in a certain area or whatever, and just can't do that without photo mode. I can wait till I go AFK and then just hope I get the right angle and snap a shot. But please, photo mode soon. Now in closing, I gotta say I really love this game. It's probably one of the better games I played this year. In fact, it might actually be one of the better games I played in the past few years. I might probably sit down and kind of go through my list and everything, but still, nothing else really stands out as being just much better than this overall experience. I actually want to go back and play it again. I've already played through, I'd say 1.5 times. One, I went through and I did a lot of side missions, and then about 2/3 of the way through, I decided to go into beeline straight towards the end. And then I streamed it again where I went through and I just killed basically every single NPC. Like seriously, every single NPC and quest giver, and the game still found a way to allow me to continue to progress. So you can, I guess you could pretty much like kill everything without even talking to them and complete the game. I went through about half the game that way, and a lot of the footage you guys see here today, which might throw you off a little bit because you probably think you have to kill these guys, which you have to play the game for yourselves. But you know, a lot of instances, a lot of video clips that you've seen in this particular review are videos of me like going around and killing like the civilians and just kind of clearing through everything because I just wanted to see if I could do it. And the game is written in such a way that will allow you to do that. So, you know, kudos to them for planning ahead for that kind of thing. But it goes to show just how diverse every single playthrough can be. In closing, and I know there's some things I didn't cover, there's like time dilation, which is a major part of combat, but it's only used like periodically and not necessarily that exciting because you would think that there would be different types of powers. You think like a biotic, you have different types of powers that you can use, but no, you only have the ability to slow down time, and you can augment that through perks. So that's pretty much that. You can stealth, but stealth is really hit and miss, because sometimes I will creep right up to somebody and I'll be able to attack them, and then other times I could just walk up to them and do the same thing before they see me. So it's really kind of strange the way that their awareness functions, But again, like I said earlier, it's really easy to overlook those things when the story is delivered in such a way that makes you want to progress almost regardless of how flawed you may think the rest of the game is. And really, it's not that flawed. I'm pointing out some of these things because, like I said, we should note these things because if we get an Outer Worlds 2, which we're probably going to get, and they repeat a lot of these things, then it kind of feels like they're not really trying to evolve the brand like Mass Effect did, or even Fallout did, until they didn't. And then I'm sure the reviews will reflect that accordingly. But the game is only $5 on Xbox Game Pass, so it's like really hard to not suggest for you to go and try it out for yourself. I would hazard a guess that the majority of you guys actually already played the game. You're just here to point out the things that I got wrong or missed. Or maybe don't agree with my opinion on something, which is totally fine. But for the rest of you guys, again, low buy-in, go check it out for yourself. My name is Mike B, aka Fony. Thank you so much for you guys' support here on YouTube, on Twitch, and of course on Patreon. I appreciate it so much. I will see you guys in the next one.
What do you think you're doing?
Bitch, are you serious?